Boom. So as a recap, we know a loop is just a way to repeat instructions, right? A loop allows us to repeat instructions as many times as we tell it to, or until some condition is satisfied. So in our examples we had, especially in the homework, we wanted to do some instructions until we reach some max value. In some other cases, we wanted to repeat the loop until we either made the correct guess, which was like for the PIN, like the debit card PIN assignment, or even for guessing the password. Those are like our two ways for using a while loop. Anybody confused on why we're using while loops? So like the two main ways that I taught on Tuesday. Cool. So skip past these. So what is our model for counter loops? Remember, it's 3 steps. What are those 3 steps? I see you. What's the first step? Initialize. Second step? Condition. Last step? Update. All of these have to do with your counter. First step is creating that counter so we can give C++ some way to stop the loop eventually. Second step is the condition where we're going to use that counter. We're going to say, has our counter reached some maximum value or has it reached some minimum value? And then to get it to that condition, we need to update it. Without update, you're going to get that infinite loop. Without the update step, you're always going to get that infinite loop. Or it's just not going to go into the loop at all. Questions on the model. So the syntax. We know that we have our keyword, which is while. Inside of that, we're going to have our condition, which is where we're going to use that counter, right? So this while loop could be one that actually does do counting, or it could be one that just wants to check for some condition and run until that condition is finally false. Either way, you're going to use the same syntax. So we know that something in this code needs to eventually make our condition false. Until that condition becomes false, we're going to keep running through that loop, keep iterating. Hopefully something in here makes the loop false. And then this condition will finally be false, and then we'll break out the loop. We only break out of this loop once the condition is false. Until then, it's just going to keep running and running and running. And that's why the update step is critical. Otherwise, it's just going to stay true forever. That's what the infinite loop actually means. Questions on the syntax. So let's say I want to go through this example of a user that's too young. And until they reach the age of 21, then I finally want to do some step. Let's say some cout statement or whatever. It doesn't matter what the step is. We just want to get this user or monitor this user from whatever age they are until they're 21. And so we want to use a loop for it. So what's the first step? A variable. And what is that step known as in terms of loops? Initialize. So initialize is not going to always be int count equals 0. Initialize can be whatever your starting point is. It could be 16 going down to 0. It could be 0 going up to 16. In this case, we know that the user has a starting age, right? So that's not, obviously it's not going to be 0. In this case, it's going to be 16, and we want to monitor them until what age? 21. So what's the next step? The condition. What does that look like? While age is less than 21. And so inside, we can do whatever we want to do. Let's say we just want to print out you're too young. While they're too young, we're going to print out too young. And so what's the final step? It's the final step of this model.
Age plus equals 1.
And what is that known as? Update. And these are like the 2 ways, it's actually 3. In industry, we use this syntax. If we just want to add 1 to some value every time, we just do plus plus. Plus plus. If you're not comfortable with that, that's fine. You can just do variable equals variable plus 1. I think this way is way more intuitive, personally. So I suggest that, and that's the industry practice. So again, just to reiterate what y'all already said, this step is known as what? Initialize. This is our counter. So we're gonna run this loop while age is less than 21. We know that it's starting at 16. So the valid values for age is 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Once it reaches 21, this loop will break out. So the second step, like y'all said, is condition. This is what our loop is based on. This is how we know to even run the loop in the first place. Let's say the starting age was 22. Will we even go into this loop?
No.
No. Nope. We will never even go into the loop. So the condition is what this loop is based on. And then inside this loop, we have our last step, which I said was update. This is how the age gets closer and closer and closer to breaking this condition. Without our update step, we would start at 16. Let's say we don't have this last line, right? We will have 16 is less than 21, print too young. 16 is less than 21, print out too young. We will get trapped in that. That's exactly what you're seeing like in your homework and in your lab. Like if you don't do that update step, infinite loop off rip, every time. Every time. Questions on this?
So the plus plus only pertain to like age and when we adding stuff on, like we had the past where we ain't use it.
Right, exactly. So this is only for the counter case. When you count it. When you know exactly how many times, or like, is it really dealing with numeric values? Like you know how many times you want to do something. So let's say I wanted to print out too young 5 times. Like I knew I wanted to do it five times specifically. I could start a counter from 0 and say, wow, that counter is less than 5. Like I know what parameters I'm working within. That's when you want to use your counter loop. You had a question?
What do you see was the difference between H plus plus and variable H plus plus?
It's no difference. It's just really what registers in your mind. It's like a more intuitive way to do it.
What makes it more intuitive?
I mean, nothing makes it more intuitive. It's subjective, right? Like, if this is easier to remember and makes more sense to you, then that's what's more intuitive to you. That's what's more intuitive to me.
Is that you can only use that for H plus 1, or you can use that for
Yeah, so if I wanted to increment age by 2, I can no longer
use that?
use this.
You would have to actually like.
Yeah, then I would want to do age equals age plus 2, or age plus equals 2. Yep. So there's like 3 different ways to write it. Of course, I didn't write it all like in one comment, but for this specific example, if I want to increment by 1, or even decrement by 1, let's say the age was going down, I wanted the age to be decreasing.
Would be age negative.
I could do, I could do age minus minus. Or I could do age equals age minus 1. You got your 2 ways of doing it. Really 3, but those are the.
That would make it all.
Huh?
Can you do both, like age minus minus and like age equals age minus 1?
Like, can I put both of them right there?
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't want to do both of them at the same time, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
But like, they're interchangeable is the concept. If I did age minus minus and then age equals age minus 1, that's going to change age by a value of 2. And I don't necessarily want that, like, so I'm only do 1. Questions on this piece?
The semicolon on the first one, the second one doesn't.
I mean, I didn't write a semicolon because like it was kind of like right. Thank you. I didn't write it. This is not even compiled in the code. It's a comment. So I mean, I'm not even gonna write a semicolon right there. But yeah, of course, every line of C++ code is gonna have the semicolon. Other questions? And as for the logic of what this really looks like. So I think last time we saw this flow chart, but without the actual table, right? So let's say we walk in this from the very beginning. We starting at 16. We know the starting age is 16, right? So we starting our loop. We're saying age, is it less than 21? We know that to be true, right? Therefore, we're gonna go into our loop. We're gonna do whatever we gotta do, which is print out, you too young. Then we're gonna update. So the condition was true. Age is less than 21. So we did the block, which was to print out too young. And then we did age plus plus to increment the age. So the next time we start the loop, the age is what? 17.
Yeah.
17, because we did age plus plus. We're gonna check the condition again. Is 17 less than 21? We know that to be true.
Yeah.
We execute the block of code again, which is the printout too young. Then we do our age plus plus again. We get to 18, then 19, then 20. Finally, when the age is 21, and we check the condition, is 21 less than 21?
No.
No. 21 is 21.
Yeah.
We finally get false and we end the loop. So there's no update that happens for that step because the update was inside the loop. The update was inside the loop. That's why I left this as blank. There is no update step. There is no update step. Once we exit the loop, age is not altered anymore. Age is left at whatever it was here, which is 21. Make sense? Yep.
Does it vary?
Huh?
Does it vary? Like, does it like change sometimes, or is it just like that all the time?
What is it?
Like, you see how you said age doesn't like alter the loop, right?
So what I was explaining is the fact that if we get into the loop, because remember we're trying to get age to be 21. We're trying to stay in this loop until age is 21. So until we get to, the only way we can get from 16 to 21 is to add 1 to the age every time. Once age is 21, which is here, on our 5th iteration, if I can count 6, on our 6th iteration, age is no longer less than 21 because age is 21. So we're not incrementing the age anymore. That would have only happened in here if the age was less than 21. Make sense? All right. Other questions on this one? Oh, I didn't even realize I had to. Man, it took me a long time to do this too. Dang. All right, boom. So now for what today is really about, which is nested while loops. So we saw that a little bit yesterday. For the clock question, I had a loop for the hour. Inside of it, I had a loop for the minutes. I'm gonna go back over that one and then another example I came up with. But take maybe 5 minutes. Think about how we did the clock question, right? Even pull it back up if you have the code for it, and think about how we can increment a timer. We know a timer starts from, let's say it's a microwave. You're gonna start from whatever the user inputs, let's say 3 minutes, and you're gonna count down second by second until the clock reads 0, 0, 0. Think about how we can implement this based on the logic from the clock. It's kind of just like the inverse, right? The clock was actually counting forward. The timer counts backwards. Mm-hmm. Say what again, bro? Huh? A timer counts backwards, right? You put in the time, and it works counter to how a clock works, right? The clock goes forward. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. The timer goes 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 0. Fighting. Let me see if I got some maybe Pete needs something. Just give me a thumb when you feel like you got the idea, because I'm actually kind of like write it out. Only got 3 thumbs. Where y'all at? Timer. Huh? All right, cool. So the idea again is just that this works counter to how the clock works. It works the opposite way that the clock works. So I'm gonna go through the pseudocode, which is essentially just the steps that you see in your brain. It's not code, it's just the English written steps. This is normally what programmers go through. Like we get pseudocode and we convert it to real code. Because you're not really saying lines of code in your head, right? You're saying ideas or like maybe you have some idea what a conditional might look like, but you're not writing the full algorithms in your head. So this is what you normally start with. And these are the steps I came up with. Let me know if you agree. So first, I will start with my initialization. I'm gonna start with a counter, right? Start with a counter, because I know a timer has minutes and it has seconds. So I need one counter to keep track of my minutes. That's where I'm gonna start. And I'm using the same ICU model. So that's my I step. Next is my condition. I want this loop to run for the minutes until we get down to 0 minutes, right? So let's say the user enters, they starting a timer at 5 minutes, right? It's gonna go from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 to 0. We wanna actually include 0, because on the timer, we actually do see 0. And this is that actually starts the loop. Because remember, your condition step is while some condition, and that's you starting the loop. When I go into the loop and peep how I indent it, the second part of this, if I can get to it, is indentation. Most of y'all, like, if you forget a curly brace, your code doesn't work anymore because you're not properly indenting and writing your curly braces, so it's like you kind of read mumbo jumbo. So get used to indenting. If I start a loop, I'm gonna indent everything inside of it to indicate all of this logic pertains to the loop. So once I start my loop, I'm gonna set the max seconds. Another counter. I need my 2 counters because I'm making 2 loops, right? One is for the minutes, one is for the seconds. So I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna make my second counter. Before I start doing anything real, I'm just making my counters. So I can enable myself to do stuff. What comes after the initialization step? Condition. Just like I have here, I did my counter for my initialization, then I did my condition. Initialization, then my condition. Now, and here is what I really want, right? I want to print the current time. So now that I have my counter for minutes and my counter for seconds, I can print the current time. And this should look identical to the clock. It should look identical to the clock. It's the same logic, we just counting in a different direction. So in this case, we're gonna start our counters at some real values. Let's say 3 minutes and 30 seconds. This counter will have the 3, this counter will have the 30. And we're gonna run this loop until the seconds gets down to 0. Both loops are gonna run until they get down to 0, right? Because we want our minutes to be 0 and our seconds to be 0 when we finish this, because that indicates the timer is off, the timer's done. So after I do what I want to do, the whole point of this loop was to print the time. I'm gonna do my update. Because remember, I want to go from, let's say the max seconds is 59 for a timer, 59, 58, 57, 56. So what does my update step look like? In this case, I'm not incrementing, right? I'm decrementing. So this is my counter minus minus, or counter equals counter minus 1. However you want to write it, I'm decrementing. I'm trying to get down to 0. Once I get down to 0, I know I've broken out of this loop. Once I get down to 0, because that's my condition, right? My condition says run this loop until the seconds gets down to 0. That's the same way it works in real life. And let's say we have our timer set at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. We can't get down to 2 minutes until we go from 30, 29, 28, 27, all the way down to 0. Then we go to the next minute. We go through all the seconds, then we go to the next minute. This is how we would visualize that in terms of your code. We're going through all of these progressions. And once we finish all of this, then we jump back to the outer loop, which is controlling our minutes. The outer loop is controlling our minutes. So once we go through our first iteration of the first loop, we would have gone through 60 iterations of the nested loop. So for every minute, you have 60 seconds. Once you get to the next minute, you have 60 seconds. The next minute, you have 60 seconds. Remember, the inner loop is your seconds. The outer loop is your minutes. I think this is the finished idea for the pseudocode. So 8 steps. 8 steps. And I'm gonna write the code. I think I have a little scratch pad to write the code. Yeah. So in AirStem, you should see, you see it, lecture 10 scratch pad. So for this, you should have a run button, and I set it up to automatically run your code. So this gonna be a code along. Just pretty much copy what I'm writing, and make sure you following along and ask questions. I'm gonna copy the pseudocode over, and have y'all help me like code the actual code for it. We're gonna build this together. So what I'm gonna do is, I know y'all don't have the slides, but so first step, and do I need to make this bigger? All right. So first step, we know to set the maximum minutes, we need a counter. So how do I make my first counter? Okay, for this example, let's say we're gonna set it to 3, right? Let's say we want to do 3 minutes, and let's say the max seconds is gonna be, it could be 59. So 4 minutes. Our timer maximum is 4 minutes. So we're gonna do a maximum minutes of 3, and then the seconds. Let's say we want to just skip to that part now, so it start like making sense. I'm gonna do max seconds equals 59. So far, all I'm saying is set my maximum minutes to 3, my maximum seconds to 59. So I know this inner loop, whenever I finish writing it, is going to run from 59 to 58 all the way down to 0. My outer loop, I'm hoping it runs from 3 to 2 to 1 to 0. Once both of those reach zeros, I know this whole thing is going to stop. The whole thing is going to stop. And please stop me along the way if you have questions or it's just like not making sense. So going back to step 2, now I need my condition, right? I need to start my loop. And so since max minutes, just like on the clock, right? I had like the max. But then I had the thing that was actually counting, the thing that was actually becoming like a counter. So I'm gonna show like why I need another variable in a second. So I'm gonna have current minute, and I'm gonna set it to max minutes. Cause remember, if I change max minutes, I can't really like use it here. Let me see. So maybe try to help me understand like what my condition is actually before I do that. So what is the condition that I want to run this outer loop for? Remember, this is the minutes. This is helping us count down the minutes. So how can I set up my condition in this case? I want the minutes to go from 3 to 0. So how do I know when to stop the loop? When something reaches 0, right? Well, then we will never go into this loop because max minutes is 3, right? So how we need a way to get into the loop. So it would be while the minutes, we want to run this, and while this is 3, 2, 1, right, greater than or equal to 0. Yeah, or you just never gonna get into it in the first place. Right. If I had while max minutes, how would I get stuck in the loop? No, because the final step, right? Once it reaches, so it's going to be 0 at the last step. Then the last update is going to make it -1, and then it's going to stop. Question.
What if you say max minutes less than 3 and
Max minutes less than.
3.
You said why don't I put that?
Yeah. Just asking. Why don't we less than 3 and max minutes equal to 0? So it's between 3 and 0.
Ooh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying why don't we put max minutes is greater than 0 and less than 3? Yeah, that's exactly what like this is already doing. That's exactly what this is already doing. We don't really want to set a ceiling on it. Like the 3 isn't so much important, right? That has nothing to do with when we're the stopping condition, right? We don't care what the user typed in as their starting like minutes for the timer. Let's say microwave. We don't really care. We just want to know how to stop it. Right. We're going to end up changing this in our update step from 3 to 2, from 2 to 1, from 1 to 0, and then to finally stop it from 0 to -1. So the last and final time we get right here, we're going to say while -1 is greater than or equal to 0, which is finally false, and it's going.
Wait, wouldn't you rewrite it as max min rather than max minutes? Because we don't have max minutes.
Oh, my bad. Good catch. So yeah, max min. Max minutes. So boom, we got our condition, which I believe is true. And so we got our counter for the next step.
So what the max min loop is going to do is it's going to start from 3,
Mhm.
and when it finally gets to 0, the loop is going to stop.
Well, we said it's fine if it equals 0.
Oh, equals.
So once it gets to -1, then it'll stop.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Good question. So now we need the fourth step, which is to start another loop that's going to handle our seconds. How do I do that? I would just copy what's in the first loop.
While
Is greater than or equal to.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start that. Then I'm going to end it here. And so step 5 says I want to print out the current time. So I'm going to print out max seconds, my colon, I meant max minutes, my bad. Then I'm going to end the line. So I'm hoping that prints like 3:59, 3:58, but I actually haven't told it to do that yet. So the first time it's going to print 3:59. Now what do I need to do? What's the step that makes this go from 59 to 58 all the way down to 0?
Would it be max seconds minus?
Max seconds minus. And why is that the answer?
Because it's counting down by 1.
Counting down by 1. We
Oh.
good on that? Makes sense?
Oh, wait, that makes sense.
Yep.
The 2 minuses represent the 2.
So this is akin to doing max seconds minus equals 1 or max seconds equals max seconds minus 1. Like you could have wrote it any of those 3 ways. You had a question?
Yeah, what if it was going up? Let's say it was like going increasing on 1,
Mm.
you just be plus plus.
It would be plus plus.
Oh, and the reason why it's minus is supposed to represent the 2 numbers that would be there, and then we'll just like count down from that.
Not so much. The reason why it's minus is because we count down from 59 to 0.
Oh.
That means subtract 1 every time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand.
Got it. All right, so now we got steps 1 through 7. And so at the end, actually, no, we got steps 1 through 6. So step 7 says end the nested loop, which we did, and then we need to update the minutes counter. How do we want to update the minutes counter? Max min minus. So we only ever going to update the minutes after we finally went through all of the seconds. So once the seconds reaches that -1, we finally update the minutes. Because we're trying to get both of these down to 0. From wherever they were at the beginning down to 0. So the starting point was 3:59. So the timer, I literally on my microwave, I put in 3:59. Once I hit start, all of this is gonna run. Ant-Man is gonna run, and it should print out everything that I wanted to until I see 0, 0, 0. We think it's gonna work?
You have to see out it, don't you?
Yeah, we did on line 19.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm hoping this works, because we kind of low on time. All right, let's see. We did it. Round of applause, man. Give it up. Yeah. All right, boom. Any questions on this? Was everybody live coding it like you got it to run too? All right. Huh?
and he'll just keep on going until it gets to zeros.
Which piece?
Oh, okay. My shit.
Was this like doing it this way? Was that more helpful to like get y'all to understand it?
Move your max
Yeah.
here.
Bet.
I be wanna see like both
Yeah,
examples.
Yeah.
Remember you got 2 brackets. So this is your second.
Mine just goes
and
to
this is your
3-0
fifth bracket.
and stops.
Did you do your minutes minus? Because if it's not ever printing the 2, then that means you probably not decrementing the minutes.
I put it in the same place you did after the nested block, but before the
All right.
end bracket of it.
I'm gonna come check it out. We only got 10 minutes, and it's like a few more slides I want to show. So I got you. All right. If y'all need to see this code again, I'm gonna pull it up after, but I want to get these like last couple slides out the way. So boom, we went through the pseudocode. So for the clock question, I'm gonna kind of like breeze past it, even though I think what we just did should like kind of help connect the dots for the clock. It's just in the opposite direction. So why do we need 2 loops? Why do we need 2 loops for the clock? Hours and minutes. Hours and minutes. We handling 2 variables or 2 changing things at the same time. Yeah, that's when you need a nested loop. Let's say I'm going through a maze, right? I might want to be going up, then down, then left. Like, it's 2-dimensional in a way. It's not just, yeah, exactly. And both were counter loops, so we had counters for each one. How do we update both counters? The hour hand in that example was being incremented because we were trying to reach some maximum value. And the minute hand was increased by 15 minutes in the clock example. I didn't want y'all to have to type out see a whole bunch of output, so I just said just do it every 15 minutes.
Wait, so plus equal is the same thing as plus plus?
Plus equals, you can specify
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, so how much it jumps by?
Yeah, exactly. How much it jumps by. So it's kind of confused. It's like 3 ways to kind of write the same thing, but plus plus is specifically for incrementing by 1, which is like the most common case. So now, and finally, for code quality, this is to help. This is to help you with loops, because if you don't indent and you don't have your brackets like aligned, it'll be really, really, really difficult to debug yourself. Like you're gonna pretty much always have an issue with your code. So to start to help you understand, this was an empty slide? Oh, it was a video. I'm not gonna play that, I'm gonna just talk through it. So let's say I have a function, int main, right? Do I have like a pen? All right, bet. Int main, once I opened int main, I did what? I indented every single thing inside of it. Once you see curly braces open, even if on your AirStem, as soon as you hit enter, it indents for you. So y'all should not undo that. Right? It knows what's best for you. AirStem knows what's best for you. If it indents for you, you need to be indented. You need to be indented. And this is not specific to functions. If I have a conditional if statement, right? As soon as I open those curly braces, I do what? Indent. Everything inside of it gets indented, even with an else.
So, let's say you forgot to indent, and you ran the code, what would happen?
Most of y'all do forget to indent, and it still work. It'll still work, but like that's not good practice to like, cause the thing is already indented for you, so that must mean that y'all are undoing the help. You get what I'm saying? Right. Like this looks way more readable. I mean, granted, I put the arrows in there, but without the arrows, you can clearly see what's conditional based on this condition, right?
So is it basically like, like in English when you type in an essay, you indent to go to the next paragraph?
Something like that. It's a way that makes it way more readable. Like there's programming styles that help people. Cause if you ask me to review your code and you don't indent, I'm gonna be struggling like for a couple extra seconds to figure out like what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So you want to make it, make it as easy as possible for people to read your code. So I'm gonna indent with the if, and I'm gonna also indent with the else. Both of these get indented. This is not just function and conditionals either. Your loops, and that's what we're doing right now. Please indent your loops. So once I start my loop, the curly braces, if I click enter on edge stem, it's going to automatically indent. So people, I indented the if, right? That gets indented. And then once I go into the if, remember, that gets indented. That gets indented as well. Every time I open a set of curly braces, I indent. Every single time. It's going to automatically do it for you in edge stem. Automatically. And so when I close the curly brace, that's finally when I bring my indentation back to the left. And the way this reads is everything in the if is going to be aligned. It's going to be aligned. Everything with the while is going to be aligned. It's going to be aligned. So if I want to know exactly what's in your while loop, I would first look at the indentation. But if you have everything aligned to one side, it makes it way harder for me to understand your code. So if I ever helped you, I probably started indenting your stuff for you because I couldn't even really understand what was going on. So indentation is like a courtesy. You're being courteous to your reviewers and to yourself. A lot of y'all probably don't even want to read your own code because you're not even indenting it. So get a picture of this, understand this, and please start like implementing it, being mindful of it. So I got like 2 little examples. And I'm gonna ask y'all how this code looks. So is this code correctly indented?
No.
No? What's wrong with it?
The while is, no, wait. Wait a minute.
No, the
Int count.
needs to be
Inside.
And count. What needs to happen to it?
Inside.
To the left or to the right?
Left.
To the left.
Take it back now.
But why though?
Somebody want to tell them why?
Because it looks ugly the other way.
Remember, right? I
Because
said
it's no longer in the if.
exactly. This is not inside any curly braces, right? It's not inside these curly braces, so it won't be indented. Good. How about this one? How about this one? Take a little longer. Make sure you give me a definite answer of yes or no.
Wouldn't if need to be indented to the right? That's a good answer.
So let's say is all of this indented correctly or no?
Yes.
Okay. Did I open a set of curly braces after this? So why would I indent? Right. Why would I start a new indentation? Don't get tripped up because the space. The space is just for me to separate some variable stuff from the conditional. So it wasn't just.
Need to be pushed?
If this was inside of an if, then yeah, it would be.
No, I
wait,
mean this if the if C equals review.
this?
Yeah.
What about it?
Then it needs to go to the right.
To the right? It's not inside of.
the while.
So is this stuff? So shouldn't all this
Oh.
have the same? Right.
Oh, so this one right.
We think this one is right? Yeah, sure?
I think it's right. I think it's right.
Anybody feel like it's wrong? It was right.
Yeah.
It was right. You want to clap that one up? Type shit. Type shit. All right, bet. All right, boom. We got through that in like 30 minutes for real. I'm on recording. So lab 4 I extended until Friday. I still saw some of y'all did not submit it. Please, I'm not trying to give y'all less points than you deserve for your lab. Please submit it. My last time I asked.
It's talking about 4.
Lab 4. Lab 4. That was due way back when. Lab 5 went out yesterday. I'm gonna give y'all. I thought midterms was next week, but I believe it's the week after. So I'm gonna still give y'all 2 weeks for it because I committed to the 2 weeks. But please try to get it done sooner rather than later because it's not easy. It's not easy. You got 2 weeks for it. Bother your TAs, bother me, but it is difficult. Monday, all the internships open. All the internships open, so I'm gonna finally come on campus on the Monday. I'm gonna do a party. Application party. Have your resume ready, have your transcripts ready, either from high school if you're a freshman or college if you graded as a freshman. And I'm gonna go through the applications with y'all, so when you leave, you will have been applied to whatever position.
Does it mean you print it or just like a document?
No, you're gonna submit it online, so bring the digital copy. I'm not necessarily doing resume reviews that day. So try to, I guess, come to me before then to get your stuff reviewed. I'm not even a resume reviewer, but I will try to,
What time?
What time what?
Monday.
It's probably gonna be like 6 to 7 something.
Alright.
Probably something like that.
What type of food are we expecting?
I don't know yet. It'd be up to y'all. I don't care. Nah, it's probably gonna be. I'm gonna send out red. It'll probably be in 2 or 5, bro. I got you. You good on this? Y'all know what y'all homework is? Alright. Alright.